Hey gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. So we have a pretty interesting show lined up. There were a lot of committee meetings today, but they were all in camera. They weren't showing them, so you can only get the audio. But there were some other pieces that happened this morning that were very interesting. We're going to take a look at that. To lead things off, we're going to back it up because we need to get a reference on what they'll be talking about in the committee meeting that was so excited. We've got some Conservative MPs, specifically Dan Albas, that is wild that Chrystia is just getting out of Dodge, not going to have to face the consequences. He's going to try to drag her fat butt back here to be charged. And let's just get into it. Aaron, Canadian Looney, smash the like, subscribe, check it out. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. That is it. Sorry, I'm very tired, and the lights. I've been spending a lot of time this week in front of the screens, like 90 hours this week already. Anyhow, we do have some fun on the way. Let's kick it off. Let's go. In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups. The globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Albas, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Deputy Ministers, for the work you do. Minister, the ink isn't even dry on President Trump's latest executive order, basically targeting Canada for 35%. Our steel and aluminum workers, they are scared. And yet here we have an opportunity to be able to fund here in Canada, the elbows up, Canada strong rhetoric that your government has been putting out. We can stop this loan by the Canada Infrastructure Bank, and we can go to the table with BC Ferries and plan to do it and support our steel and aluminum workers here and shipbuilders here in this country. Are you standing by the loan?
Thank you, Mr. Albas, for your question. And I do want to start by saying I know that the wildfires are touching your constituency. And I want to say I support you and your constituents, and the federal government is here to provide any support they need. I totally agree with you that this is a moment of crisis for the Canadian steel and aluminum sectors, and they need our government's support. They need our country's support. I was on the phone this morning with the CEO of one of our steel companies and was in touch with one of our union leaders, as well as talking to the CEO of C-SPAN. My approach right now is to ensure that in the areas under my control, the areas that Transport Canada has responsibility for, we are pushing for Canadian workers in the manufacturing sector and for the use of Canadian steel and aluminum. That's why I sent out 71 letters in June to all the agencies I'm responsible for. That's why I'm convening a meeting specifically ensuring that we are building ferries in Canada using Canadian steel, and why I will be convening a meeting to do the same thing with the rail sector.
Minister, it sounds like you're comfortable with the loan going out and supporting effectively the outsourcing of Canadian jobs to subsidize them over in the People's Republic of China at a Chinese state-owned shipyard. And you're speaking of letters. I have your letter here dated June 16th, 2025, and it says, I am dismayed that BC Ferries would select a Chinese state-owned shipyard to build new ferries in the current geopolitical context. I ask you verify and confirm with the utmost certainty that no federal funding will be diverted to support the acquisition of these new ferries. Did you know that the Canada Infrastructure Bank was going to be funding $1 billion of taxpayers' money to the acquisition of these vessels when you wrote this letter?
So let me first take issue, if I may, with your opening comment. I am dismayed by this procurement. I have made that very, very clear. And it's not just rhetoric. I have acted. I'm the transport minister. I was and am aware that there is money that goes from transport operating support for the operation of ferries in British Columbia. It was very important to me to make formally clear an insistence that none of that operating money be used for this procurement, and I have received those assurances. Second of all, and as importantly, I am taking active steps to ensure that in going forward purchases of anything that Transport Canada has control over, we are putting a priority on Canadian manufacturing jobs, on Canadian steel, and on Canadian aluminum. We are not just talking about it, we are actually working to do it, and that is really important. And I have to say, I was very encouraged by the conversation I had today with C-SPAN. They're excited to be part of this work.
Minister, any accountant will tell you that an operating budget will have payment down of debt. So BC Ferries will be using some of the federal monies that it'll have in its operating budget for servicing the debt to the Canada Infrastructure Bank. So that's superfluous to this. But you are the senior minister of you and Minister Robertson. Are you going to say in cabinet, number one, we should cancel this loan in favor of steel and aluminum and shipbuilding here in Canada, yes or no?
I have been very clear in my testimony today before the committee, in the House of Commons, and in all my opportunities to speak formally about this, that I am disappointed by this procurement. And in fact, I think there is widespread disappointment across Canada with this procurement. In the areas that I'm responsible for as Transport Minister, I am ensuring that our procurement is favoring Canadian manufacturers, favoring Canadian steel and Canadian aluminum. That's why I sent out 71 letters in June to the agencies under my authority saying this is what we are going to be doing.
Minister, you have an opportunity to say no to this loan and to say yes to those conversations and put some heft behind it. It sounds to me you're like a ship sailing at night, seeing another one sail by, except those are our jobs going to China, to a shipyard that's owned and managed by the state. Minister, why aren't you saying, no, I won't support this loan? It's contrary to what the government's intentions are and what Canadians are asking for. Why are you picking the loan over your own letter?
I've been in politics for 12 years now, and I've been compared to many different things, but I think it's the first time I've been compared to a ship. But I've been compared to worse. And let me just say, Mr. Albus, that I am disappointed by this procurement. In the areas under my control as Transport Minister, I can assure you I am doing everything in my power to ensure that the agencies that Transport Canada is responsible for put a priority on Canadian manufacturing workers, Canadian steel and aluminum. And I just want to add, it's not just about statements. We have to work together, industry, all levels of government and unions, to be sure we have the capacity to use Canada's steel and aluminum. I am totally devoted to doing that.
Thank you very much, Minister. Reeves, I have Mr. Albus, suivi par Mr. Barcelona-Duval.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the floor. And to the honourable member from Victoria, I will be happy to tell him what has changed. I read today, published September 18th, 2020.
So just in case anybody needs to, well, you would probably need to understand. So that last piece with Chrystia being questioned, that was from early in August. But since then, you saw that she said she didn't have any ideas, no ideas. She was repulsed by the loan, whatever. A story broke since then. And Albus is wild about it. Like, we're going to have a few Conservative MPs that are pretty sour about this, but Albus can't keep it in. Like, anyways, that's it. So this happened this morning.
5 by Bill Curry, Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief of the Globe and Mail. BC Ferries deals raised with Transport Canada weeks before Freeland's criticism, emails show. The fact that the CEO, if this report is accurate, the fact that the CEO of BC Ferries, 6 weeks ahead of the announcement about their controversial purchase of 4 ferries from a state own shipyard in the People's Republic of China, that he flagged it with the Deputy Minister of Transport Canada, the highest on the nonpartisan side of that department, flagged it with him, was critical that the minister was saying one thing, saying she was shocked. Mr. Chair, this says to me, it's a damning indictment, because Transport Canada was made aware of 6 weeks before that announcement, and they did nothing to protect Canadian jobs. They just sat on their hands and let it proceed. They didn't act to secure those contracts. They didn't push back at it. This raises a number of questions about former Minister Chrystia Freeland's abrupt resignation, and blows a hole in her narrative that she wanted BC Ferries to buy Canadian and was dismayed and upset about it. She said these things on the floor of the House of Commons when myself and other members raised concerns about this procurement. So, Mr. Chair, we need to get to the bottom of this. This government has not been level with British Columbians and with Canadians in general. They say, hand on heart, we want to buy Canadian. Canada's strong. Let's work together. Let's build things here faster, better than we've ever done. And yet they were given a heads up by the CEO of BC Ferries and did nothing. So we need to get to the bottom of this. Chrystia Freeland should come and testify and exactly explain herself how she could say one thing on the floor of the House of Commons. And as far as I understand, she's still a sitting MP. I'm sure now, as a former minister, she has the time to work with us so she can explain herself. Mr. Chair, this just reiterates the need to cancel this loan. $1 billion of taxpayer money that is going to a PRC shipyard. I am sick to my stomach that this is what the government has done in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albus. Prochainement, j'ai Mr. Barcelona-Duval, suivi par Mr. Greaves. Mr. Barcelona-Duval.
Mr. Barcelona-Duval, followed by Mr. Greaves. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, as for Mr. Greaves' question, indeed.
Even the PQ wants her back.
I could resume the comments of my Conservative colleague, but the only minister that we would ask to come back is the former minister, Mrs. Freeland. Mr. Robertson already came and he wouldn't be convened again, and the Minister of Public Safety never did come before this committee to speak to this matter. And the reason why I think it's important that Ms. Freeland return is because there are major new facts that we've learned since her last appearance before the committee. Ms. Freeland wrote a letter, and she said loud and clear that she disagreed with Canadian money going towards purchasing Chinese ships. And in fact, we're learning now that she was aware of everything. She knew very well that it was a contract that was up and coming long before it was awarded, and it was being funded with federal money. So the narrative that was created this summer before us in this committee was that, this happened while the government was no longer sitting, it wasn't operating, there was an election, and then we were just put before a fait accompli. So now we're learning that for some time, her and her team were aware, and perhaps even other departments. And what's even more frustrating is that her letter that was published throughout all the media, while in fact that was just nonsense, and it took people for, idiots. So I'd like to have her here to explain herself.
Prochainement, j'ai Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Greaves.
Barcelona-Duval. Next, Mr. Greaves.
Chair. You know, it's instructive to hear our colleagues across kind of outline what their objections are, because if we apply just the slightest bit of pressure, I think we start to see their argument really fraying at the seams. A basic reminder to our colleagues, BC Ferries is a provincial entity. It is a corporation, the primary shareholder of which is the government of British Columbia. It does not report to the Federal Minister of Transport. And I think it's an unfortunate and indeed somewhat alarming precedent to suggest that federal agencies, federal entities, especially those who are intended to operate arm's length from government, should in fact be pulled into this political bickering and to be made ultimately a punching bag for other purposes. The agenda of our Conservative colleagues is very clear. They're on the record about this. They are demanding not only the cancellation of a loan, and I'll return to that in a moment, which is utterly essential towards BC Ferry's ability to continue to provide a critical service on the west coast of this country. But this is really just a Trojan horse for the broader agenda, very clearly articulated that the Conservative Party wishes the abolition of the entire Canadian Infrastructure Bank. BC Ferries is being used as a vehicle to advance a broader agenda, which is a multi-year vendetta against a federal entity that, as we speak, is in the midst of funding critical investments in infrastructure across this country. The CIB is a federal agency, Mr. Chair, but it also does not report to the Federal Minister of Transport. And so both of the arm's length agencies at issue in this matter are not in fact accountable to the minister, the former minister, that my colleagues opposite are demanding return towards this committee. So it is, I think, somewhat confusing, not least of which if we interrogate the fact that this is a loan, Mr. Chair. The money that the Canadian Infrastructure Bank independently decided to allocate towards BC Ferries to support their investment in fleet renewal is a loan that will be repaid with interest. That is the business model of the Canadian Infrastructure Bank. And so this entire project is not one that will cost Canadian taxpayers money in the long run. It is, in fact, an initiative that will generate benefit to the public purse, and in the process, of course, will provide improvements to a service that is completely critical in my part of the country. And in that respect, I will simply underscore again a point that I've made in this committee previously, that we are in fact playing politics here with a service that British Columbians rely upon, that my constituents in Victoria require for daily life. This is not just an abstract matter. This is what gets food and essential goods to Vancouver Island, home to more than 800,000 Canadians. This is a service that underpins the economy of Western Canada. This is a service that provides 33 million rides every year, dwarfing by an order of magnitude the total number of passengers who ride passenger ferries in Atlantic Canada on an annual basis. So there are indeed issues related to BC Ferries that I would be very keen for this committee to take up, not least of which being the inequitable funding afforded to ferries on the West Coast as compared to our Atlantic Canadian cousins. But the issue at hand here, Mr. Chair, is really using for political expedience something that British Columbians cannot afford to have delayed, cannot afford to have undermined. And so on behalf of my constituents in Victoria, and on behalf of my colleagues who represent the majority of British Columbians, this is a political exercise that we're engaging in, which is using something that we rely on in British Columbia in service of a broader political objective of our Conservative colleagues, which is to undermine and ultimately destroy a federal agency that is providing funds to the benefit of the federal taxpayer in British Columbia and elsewhere across Canada. I don't think it's appropriate, and I don't think we should indulge in it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greaves. Next, I have Mr. Muse.
Thank you. Let me amplify some of the comments made by my colleagues, Mr. Albus and Mr. Barcelou-Duval. There are new facts, and that's why this motion has been put forward. But, I don't think it's political to be fighting to protect Canadian jobs. I mean, I come from the Hamilton region, where the steel industry has been absolutely devastated with the unjust tariffs. And why, if we're spending $1 billion that's being backstopped by Canadian taxpayers, is that not going to be Canadian steel produced in Hamilton that's being used, rather than of course this going overseas to China? In fact, speaking of then Minister Freeland, she held a half-day photo op summit in Hamilton at ArcelorMittal Dofasco to buy Canadian. So, I guess that was all politics too. So, because what actually was accomplished by a half-day photo op summit. By the way, there were shipbuilders there. There was rail there, and they talked about the need to use Canadian steel. That's why it was held at Dofasco. So I think here we've got a great example here, and it'd be great to ask further questions about what transpired there and the discussions around that, because there is again these new facts, and so it's appropriate to delve further into this with this motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muse. Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, and I'll just respond to start out by responding to some of the points Mr. Graves made. They're relied on a series of logical fallacies. I think I can put it kindly. So, first of all, his first point is that somehow, if in fact we don't buy this ferry from a Chinese contractor, we can't have a ferry. That's simply untrue. The Liberals may not believe in Canadian manufacturing, but Conservatives do.
Hear, hear.
We believe that those ferries can be built by Canadian hands with Canadian steel. They may not believe that's true, but we do. Secondly, he says, well, there's no federal control, there's no federal relationship between BC ferries. Untrue. The CIB, of course, is underwriting it in terms of $1 billion, and that's a Crown corporation. And if Crown corporations aren't responsible to taxpayers, who are they responsible to? Secondly, in the documents, it says there's numerous times, and I can provide you the citations, when federal bureaucrats talk about the federal flows that are coming directly to BC ferries. And quite frankly, one of the reasons why we need to have further conversations about this is the fact that a lot of those documents get to a certain point and then they're redacted. There are literally hundreds of pages of redactions that I would like to know what's under there. There might be some information in there that is commercially sensitive, and that's fine, but we need to test that evidence. And then he says, well, why are you asking for former Minister Freeland, who we really should have is a housing minister? Add it. We're happy to have him come and have him discuss again some of the redactions as well. We will gladly accept that amendment to add that minister. The reality is, these documents, it's not really what we know from these documents, it's what they've unveiled that we don't know. There are discussions amongst bureaucrats talking about the impact that the cancelling of this loan will have on Canadian PRC relations. That's challenging, because we shouldn't be looking at that. Civil servants shouldn't be looking at shouldn't be looking at tenders and going, okay, well, we should allow this loan to go ahead, or we should allow this contract to go ahead because it may affect relationships otherwise. No, we should be trying to get the best ferries, underwriting the best loans. And finally, something that for the BC audience out there, and I believe Mr. Graves is a BC MP, that I'm surprised, quite frankly, he's not surprised that he doesn't want to find out more about this, is in there. It completely redacts the BC Hydro documents and their report completely. This is tens of pages, but you know what? They forgot to redact some of it. They are saying that the cost of having electric ferries will cost BC taxpayers $500 million. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money to upgrade their facilities. So there's a lot of unknown things in there, and quite frankly, I would say to my colleagues across the board, this is something that deserves many, many meetings. And I think the block motion is flawed, not because it's including the BC ferries, but because we don't have enough meetings from it. There's a lot more to told. Just the hundreds of pages of redaction Like, do you have no curiosity about what's behind that in that blackout? Because I certainly do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. Next, I have Dr. Lewis. Dr. Lewis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to highlight that this investigation is not about casting the CIB in a certain light. It's really about bringing transparency to Canadians who are asking a lot of questions about what happened and who have a genuine interest in just knowing what happened and what the story is behind how these ships got the contract got sent over to Beijing. So in question period, when this contract first came up, it was revealed that a Chinese shipyard got the contract, and Minister Freeland brushed this off as a provincial matter and said that they only fund operations. But at the very same time, her staff were emailing the Prime Minister's office about how to manage the CIB announcement loan. Parliament was in some sense misled. Canadians expect the truth from their government, not political positioning to cover for some aspect of what appears to be incompetence. And that's why these documents need to be disclosed to the public, and the study needs to happen. The Liberals also told Canadians that Ottawa knew nothing and had nothing to do with the BC Ferry's Chinese state-owned shipyard contract. But now we know that the Canada Infrastructure Bank, a federal crown corporation, actually bankrolled and subsidized the interest rates and gave interest rates far below that which Canadians can secure on their own for contracts. And so this is of serious interest to the Canadian public. Instead of transparency, Liberals chose to deflect and deny and almost spin what had happened. And Canadians deserve transparency to know why their tax dollars are being invested in a Chinese-owned shipyard and not in their own shipyard industries and workers. In addition, the Canada Infrastructure Bank was supposed to invest in Canadian infrastructure. Instead, it put a $1 billion loan for ships built in China with zero Canadian content requirements. That's not building Canada and for building Canadians. That's really building Beijing. Why wasn't a single question asked of the CIB about protecting Canadian jobs and shipyards before signing the check? Canadians also need to know more about the timeline of events and how it was only in June that we found out that the contract was going to the Chinese shipyard when decisions were made fairly early in January. Also, how did the CIB not publicly announce the deal before they signed the check? And why did they wait so long before announcing? Those are other questions that Canadians are curious about.
Point of order? Sorry,
Dr. Lewis, give me 1 second. I have a point of order from Ms. Whelan.
I'm curious. This is that we've had these questions and explored them when we invited the CIB CEO to talk. Sorry,
Ms. Whelan.
Okay.
That's not a point of order. That's a debate. And if you want the floor, I can put your name down.
Okay. Sorry. My apologies.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Whelan. Sorry, Dr. Lewis. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And essentially what we got back from the Liberals were pages and pages of blacked out documents. And the documents from the BC Ferries tell a very different story than what the Transport Minister told to Parliament. At the end of the day, Canadians deserve straightforward answers. And that's why this investigation is essential and is needed. The disclosed documents raise more questions than they do answers. And some of them are, when exactly did the Liberals know about this deal? Why did they not do more to act when they were alerted to the deal by BC Ferries? When exactly did Minister Freeland know the contract was going to China and that the CIB was bankrolling it? When exactly did the Housing Minister become aware of the same? Why were Canadian bidders ignored and no priorities or procurement processes laid out to ensure Canadian bidders were included? Why were national security interests ignored and played down by this Liberal government? Conservatives are calling for a complete and full committee investigations. Canadians deserve accountability, and they deserve full disclosure. Full disclosure of the $1 billion deal at a time when our workers and economy are suffering. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Any other discussion? No?
Allow the friendly amendment to change their amendment, then we will discuss their amendment, correct?
I see no objection to the friendly amendment to Mr. Lauzon's amendment, and now we'll have a discussion on Monsieur Lauzon's amendment. If we're all in accordance, we all agree? Okay, the floor is open to now discuss Mr. Lauzon's amendment. Discussion, commentaire?
Discussions or comments?
Yes, Mr. Albus?
So I just wanted to confirm, Mr. Chair, that the only real changes are technical changes, with the exception of we're going to have the Minister of Public Safety for an hour in the open and then another hour with officials. That's essentially the most substantive change, but there's some minor editorial changes. Is that correct?
I believe that's the case. I'll ask Mr. Lauzon to confirm that is his amendment. Okay.
So, but we should expect all other ministers to come in as is written in Xavier's motion, correct?
The clerk and I will obviously do all the work necessary to make sure that that happens.
Good. Okay, just clarify.
Is it beneficial for the members to reread the amendment, including Mr. Barcelou Duval's friendly amendment, or are we good to go?
I think
We're good to go? Okay. So we want to go to a vote on the amendment first? We'll do that. Okay, so we'll go to a vote. Oh, sorry, Mr. Greaves, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just to clarify whether the amendment or the proposed friendly revision to the amendment does also, I believe, remove the Ministers of Revenue and Labour from the list. Is that correct? Or are they still included amongst the ministers to be summoned?
That was part of what was put forward, so I'll leave it. I have Mr. Barcelou Duval's hand up, and then I'll turn over to Mr. Lauzon. Mr. Barcelou Duval.
In fact, to Mr. Greaves' question, that's not what I understood in the amendment brought forward by Mr. Lauzon. Perhaps I misunderstood his original amendment, but the Secretary of State for Labour and Revenue, well, they have a role to play when it comes to, well, the discounted chauffeurs. There is an aspect connected with work insurance and so on. So this would be something that would be good to know what kind of leadership these ministers have, or what these secretaries have, or what their role entails currently. Thank you, Mr. Barcelou Duval. Mr. Greaves? Mr. Lauzon and then Mr. Greaves. Indeed, what I read was deleting Section 12 under Section B, including all elements of Section 12. Now, Mr. Barcelou Duval, you said that you'd like a sub-amendment, but we'd have to remove the minister.
Anyways, we're going to
from Section C. Just a minute.
Right now, they're just filibustering till the end. Anyways, they're looking to get Chrystia Freeland, her chubby butt, back here to answer for her lies. And I think that'll be really fun. Like, she's been busted, and they were trying to get her at a Dodge before they could, I guess, catch her red-handed. She's gone now.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning. My name is Frank Caputo, Member of Parliament for Kamloops, Thompson-Nicola, and I am so proud to stand before you, not just as a Member of Parliament, but with all of these amazing members of our caucus, including our Deputy Leader here, in support of a private member's bill that I just tabled, the bill that will be the most substantive change to intimate partner violence in Canadian history. For far too long, intimate partner violence has been a crime that's committed behind closed doors, a crime that goes vastly underreported. It impacts every socioeconomic group. It impacts all people, no matter who you are, all occupations. We recently had the homicide of Bailey McCourt, an innocent victim in Kelowna. All she was doing was living her life, a life that was cut short by intimate partner violence. And for far too long, we as parliamentarians have sat idle while people die. The vast majority of homicides involve intimate partners. And that's why today I tabled a private member's bill with the support of my caucus. That private member's bill will do 4 things. First, it will create a new offense of assault intimate partner. There's a fundamental difference between assaulting somebody at the bar or on the street and assaulting an intimate partner behind closed doors, a relationship often of psychological and economic dependence. Secondly, it will make murder of an intimate partner first-degree murder, just like murder of a peace officer, murder in the course of another offense, or murder that's planned and deliberate. Third, this bill will create a mechanism by which judges can have a risk assessment conducted while a person is on release. That means that if somebody's showing the red flags, but they're still not detainable, they haven't breached, but all the red flags are going off, and we all know what those look like, that an intimate partner victim, a judge or a prosecutor can make application to the court to have that person brought in for 7 days for a risk assessment. Last, this bill will streamline and modernize the detention of seized goods. It's my honor to be standing here with my amazing caucus members to introduce this bill. I urge all parliamentarians to pass it and to pass it as soon as possible so we can deal with one of Canada's greatest issues when it comes to violence.
Oh yeah.
What indication did you get from other parties and from the Liberal parties that they are looking at it and they're looking at it seriously or not?
Thus far, I've had positive feedback. Obviously, they haven't seen the bill in its full form. To me, this is a bipartisan issue, an issue that transcends every party. I know that we even had Premier Eby, who's actually here on Parliament Hill today, talk about making murder of an intimate first-degree murder. This is a bipartisan issue. I hope the Liberals will get behind this. I hope the Bloc and NDP will get behind this and that they get behind it very quickly.
Et Madame Bien, quand on regarde la question des violences conjugales, violences domestiques, violences de partenaires intimes, féminicides, à quel point un projet de loi comme ça aura un impact sur le terrain, vous croyez? Comment ça aura un impact?
Ben écoutez, il y a plusieurs éléments qui font en sorte que la violence contre les femmes est actuellement en haut.
Sorry, I left Brandy Love in there by mistake. That's Dominique Vien. She's great, but Francophone never speaks English. She's out. So we put Chrystia Freeland on the thumbnail, so we shouldn't disappoint people. Here we go, gang. This is Chrystia Freeland. This is hard to watch, but, you know, people like watching train wrecks and accidents and stuff like that. She's a train wreck.
Mr. Speaker, we know that things are challenging for Canadians right now. Mr. Speaker, our government understands that this is a challenging time for too many families across the country. Mr. Speaker, our government absolutely believes that everyone in Canada needs to pay their fair share. Mr. Speaker, I am glad that the member opposite has asked a question about mortgage renewals because it gives me an opportunity to be sure that all Canadians know about the Canadian Mortgage Charter. Mr. Speaker, as I think everyone in this House knows, Canada has a AAA rating and the lowest debt and deficit in the G7. Mr. Speaker, let's talk about some facts and reality. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, Canada today has 1.1 million jobs than before COVID. The jobs recovery has been 6 months faster than after the 2008 recession. Mr. Speaker, for once we heard something true from the Conservatives. Yes, the Finance Minister does believe in talking about numbers. So let's talk about some numbers. 1.1 million more jobs in Canada than before COVID. Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to supporting the least vulnerable in Canada. Mr. Speaker, a UNICEF report released this month shows the truth. Mr. Speaker, Last week, the Conservatives voted against Operation Unifier. Mr. Speaker, our government absolutely understands that the housing and the cost of living are challenges for Canadians. You know, Mr. Speaker, when the Conservatives talk about working families, everyone knows those are crocodile tears. Let me tell you what is common sense for working families across our country. It is common sense to have a national system of early learning and childcare with fees reduced by 50% across the country. You know, Mr. Speaker, earlier today the Conservatives were talking about hypocrisy. Mr. Speaker, Canadians have learned through bitter experience that when Conservatives talk about the public finances, what they're really talking about is cutting the government support Canadians depend on. Mr. Speaker, since we're asking questions of MPs, Mr. Speaker, people who live in glass houses really should not throw stones. Mr. Speaker,
There's only a minute left, guys. Sorry. I thought it was fun.
I'd like to thank the member opposite for the very important question. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch. You know, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to being out of touch with regular Canadians, let me tell you what was out of touch. Mr. Speaker, bitter experience has taught Canadians that whenever Conservatives talk about public finances, well, Mr. Speaker, we've learned just now about one specific thing Canadians will cut. I'm an MP for Ontario, the member opposite is too. They're going to cut the nearly $1,000 that an average family that a family of four in Ontario is getting. Mr. Speaker, this fall we put forward a comprehensive economic plan that included generational changes to Canada's competition law that will bring down grocery prices. Mr. Speaker, it's pretty hard to take these Conservatives seriously. Squiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
It's very simple. The entire philosophy of this Liberal government for the last 50 years is putting the needs of criminals before the needs of victims and community safety. It's an ideology that is whacked.
It's whacked. Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Larry Brock is one of the best speakers in the House of Commons, very engaging. He's going to be our next Attorney General, and he's fighting for Canadians. Let's take a look at his presentation this morning on the House of Commons floor. Like, share, subscribe. Larry Brock is definitely one to watch.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
It's what?
Debate. The Honourable Member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to advise I'll be sharing my time with the member from Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, it's always a pleasure to rise on behalf of the great citizens of Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations. I rise today in strong support of our Conservative motion calling on the government to end the failed experiment of leniency and to adopt a common-sense 3 strikes and you're out law so that the worst repeat violent offenders serve real time, not living room sentences, and so communities are finally safe again. For 10 long years, this Liberal government has put the interests of criminals ahead of the safety and dignity of victims. They have prioritized the rights of repeat offenders over the safety of law-abiding Canadians. I say this as someone who served nearly 2 decades as a Crown attorney. I have looked victims in the eye. I have sat with families shattered by repeat offenders who should never have been back on the street. Over those years, the offenders I saw grew more dangerous and more emboldened because the system kept signaling that the consequences were optional. Now, this soft on crime philosophy did not begin with these Liberals. Its roots stretch back more than 50 years when Pierre Trudeau's Liberal government openly declared its intent to stress the rehabilitation of individuals rather than the protection of society, even if it involved community risk. And Canadians have now been paying the price for those risks ever since. The Young Offenders Act dramatically reduced sentences, even for those convicted of murder. Statutory release shortened jail time by a third, and parole policies make a mockery of sentences pronounced in court. Today, full parole can come as early as 1/3 of a sentence, and unescorted temporary absences as early as 1/6. The practical effect of this liberal philosophy was clear. The faint hope of rehabilitating an offender was elevated over denouncing unlawful conduct, deterring crime, or protecting society. And the result has been a revolving door of hardened criminals arrested, released, and reoffending, leaving victims to suffer the consequences.
Shame.
That is why the Conservative government of Stephen Harper worked to restore balance to our justice system, reestablishing the importance of denunciation, deterrence, and the protection of society. But these liberals spent the past decade undoing that progress, scrapping mandatory minimums for serious gun crimes, making bail even easier to obtain, and carrying on the soft on crime legacy. This became crystal clear in 2019 when the Liberals passed Bill C-75. Amongst other things, it legislated a principle of restraint that pushes release at the earliest opportunity on the least restrictive terms. That may sound tidy in a briefing note, but in real life, it tilted the system away from public safety. The Department of Justice itself describes the bill's goal as timely release with the least onerous conditions. Then came the notorious Bill C-5 in 2022. This law repealed mandatory minimum penalties for dozens of serious offenses that were constitutionally upheld and brought back conditional sentence orders, what most Canadians now call house arrest. At the time, then Liberal Justice Minister David Lametti said the Liberals were turning the page on a failed Conservative criminal justice policy. But what did that really mean? It meant making conditional sentences possible for serious offenses like sex assault, kidnapping, human trafficking, even fentanyl trafficking, and robbery with a violence. These are not small crimes. They are violent, scarring, life-altering offenses. Imagine telling a victim of kidnapping that their attacker can now serve a sentence from the comfort of their own living room. That is the reality Bill C-5 created. When the public backlash grew, the Liberals tried to save face then with Bill C-48. The then Justice Minister, Arif Virani, promised it would make Canadians safer, but then admitted, in his own words, that he cannot measure what exactly that would look like. That is not a plan, that's simply a press release. And when those reforms failed, Liberal ministers tried to pass the buck. We heard the public safety minister, who was the justice minister at the time, say, quote, "The bail system is sound," end of quote. We saw Liberal ministers and this Prime Minister blame provinces, telling premiers to step up while refusing to fix their failed criminal code policies they themselves broke. Canadians don't want a blame game. They want a justice system that works and is fair. Madam Speaker, it's not just Conservatives sounding the alarm. For years, police chiefs, premiers, mayors from across the country have been begging this Liberal government to fix the mess. They have been obstructionist ever since, Madam Speaker. The Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police said the changes were urgently needed to stop violent repeat offenders from cycling through communities. The Toronto Police Association repeatedly warned of the dangers of letting repeat violent offenders back on the streets. Mayors in Vancouver, Winnipeg, and Toronto have all publicly pressed for real reform because their citizens are living with the consequences every single day. All 13 premiers from across party lines signed joint letters to the federal government demanding immediate action, yet the government continued its obstructionist ways. They dug in, they defended its failed laws, and ignored those voices from the very same stakeholders they should have been listening to. What has been the result? The numbers don't lie. Since 2015, crime has exploded across all categories. Extortion alone, over 300% increase.
If anybody's looking for the Chrystia Freeland bits, because that was on the thumbnail, just zip back in the timeline. It's all at the beginning. It's all Chrystia Freeland. Anyhow, sorry to interrupt.
Now, these are not just statistics. They represent real Canadians whose lives have been shattered by violence. Consider the Saskatchewan tragedy in 2022. Miles Sanderson, already out on statutory release after 59 convictions. 59, let that sink in, went on a rampage, killing 11 people and injuring 17 more. If he had been kept in jail, as common sense dictates, those families would still have their loved ones today. In Peel Region, police arrested 18 individuals tied to home invasions, armed robberies, and carjackings. Shockingly, half of them were out on release at the time. In Vancouver, police reported that just 40 prolific repeat offenders were arrested more than 6,000 times in a single year. That, by definition, Madam Speaker, is the revolving door justice system. And that is why, if this Liberal government were truly serious about tackling violent crime, they would adopt the Conservative plan for 3 strikes and you're outlaw. Here's what it means in practice. When someone has been convicted of 3 serious violent offenses, they will no longer be able to serve their time at home or walk out with probation. No more conditional sentences, no more house arrests. Instead, they will face a mandatory minimum period of incarceration of 10 years, with the possibility of life in prison depending on the severity of their crimes. They will be designated as dangerous offenders, which means they would not be released until they can actually prove they are no longer a threat to the public. And if they ever want to earn back their freedom, they will have to show it. That means spotless behavior, clean drug tests, and real steps towards rehabilitation. The principle is simple. 3 serious violent crimes means you've shown society you cannot be trusted to walk free. You will serve real time, not living room sentences. That, Madam Speaker, is how you effectively protect communities, restore faith in the justice system, and finally put victims ahead of repeat violent offenders. Madam Speaker, Canadians are tired of Liberal governments that coddle criminals and abandon victims. The motion says enough is enough. It ends the failed approach to Bill C-75 and 5. It responds to the pleas of police, premiers, and mayors. It gives Crown attorneys and judges the tools they need to keep dangerous offenders where they belong, behind bars. Most importantly, it restores the fundamental duty of any federal government, and that's to keep Canadians safe. Madam Speaker, Canadians want their children to walk to school without fear. They want seniors to feel safe in their homes. They want women to know that their abusers won't be back on their doorstep the very next day. They want law-abiding citizens put before repeat violent offenders. Conservatives are bringing forward this motion because Canadians deserve more than excuses. They deserve more than obstructionist ways. They deserve safety, first and simple.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Opponent to Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I would question a number of the motivations and even some of the facts that the member has actually put on the record. I think what we do know, Madam Speaker, is in the last federal election, Canadians elected a new Prime Minister. A new Prime Minister that understands the community concerns in regard to crime and safety. The new Prime Minister has made it very clear that we are going to be seeing bail reform legislation this fall, Madam Speaker. Members know that full well. But it doesn't stop Conservatives from, as much as possible, milking Canadians through email blasts to try to raise money on crime, Madam Speaker. My question to the member is, why does the member not acknowledge that we are in fact going to be seeing bail reform, because he knows full well we have a Prime Minister that's committed to be bringing it in this fall?
Well, member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Our current Prime Minister, that particular member, all the previous members of the Justin Trudeau government, even the new members of this particular Liberal government, have obstructed every opportunity for us to advance common sense solutions to deal with the criminal justice system. For the last 10 years, you have continually, through Madam Speaker, he has continually prioritized the needs and the comfort of criminals at the expense of community safety and victims. So this Prime Minister has had over 5 months to introduce this legislation. Why are we waiting as long as it is? Community safety is not a partisan issue. I keep repeating that right across this country. Why have they waited as long as they have when the last 4 years every major stakeholder said, do your job?
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his speech. And my question really comes in a spirit of non-partisanship. The question is about increasing crime. It's a concern that we have in the bloc, and more personally, as the critic for status of women, I see the increasing crimes against women, and that's why I tabled a motion, which will be the first motion at the FIWO committee this fall. We're going to be studying, among other things, whether women are truly adequately protected by the justice system. So it's in a spirit of non-partisanship. My motion could even be amended. Now, my question for my colleague is, will they take into account the serious study that the FIWO committee will be doing? The Honourable Member.
I thank my colleague for that excellent question. Women, when I classify victims, I highlight women across this country have long felt that there is absolutely no justice to our system. They view it as a legal system because for 10 plus years they have long been abandoned in the process. The sentencing guidelines are not reflecting the true gravity of intimate partner violence. So to answer my colleague's question, absolutely, we will prioritize victims, particularly women, of intimate partner violence to ensure that their offenders are sanctioned appropriately, meaningfully, so that it has not only a denunciation impact, but it also has a deterrent impact.
Member for Caribou Prince George.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank our honourable colleague for his tireless efforts on this file. Madam Speaker, you cannot open up social media, turn on the TV, radio, or newspaper to see another violent offender, repeat offender being released and wreaking havoc in our communities. In my riding at Caribou Prince George, I think of Mr. Bob Hubbard, a senior who returned home last fall to find his house being robbed. When he tried to stop the robbers, they ran over him with his own vehicle, dragging him and leaving him for dead. Within hours, they were caught, and within hours, they were turned loose. Through you, Madam Speaker, why is it that this Liberal government continues their obstructionist ways and refusing or continuing to put the rights of violent offenders before average or everyday Canadian citizens?
Brief answer from the Honourable Member for Brantford, Brant South Six Nation.
Fantastic question. It's very simple. The entire philosophy of this Liberal government for the last 50 years is putting the needs of criminals before the needs of victims and community safety. It's an ideology that is whacked.
Oh, yeah.
Can't argue with that, Larry. It is whacked. Carney is pulling our country apart, ripping it apart on purpose for the benefit of Brookfield and his own bottom line. My name's Aaron. We're exposing these liberals. Like, share, subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video. Thank you very much.
The obvious path to follow.
Reprise du débat. The Honourable Member.
What we have here now is another speech like Larry just did, but this is a new MP. Her name's Rhonda Kirkland, and this ties into the speech that Frank Caputo gave. She's going to be making arguments for that. And again, like, she's a new MP. I wanted to show this because I've noticed her a couple of times this week. She seems pretty sharp. So we're going to take a look at this.
For Oshawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be sharing my time with the member for King Vaughan. It is a privilege to rise, as always, on behalf of the resilient residents of Oshawa. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm not exaggerating, despite what the members across the way think, when I say that residents in my community are scared. They are worried about walking down their own streets, sending their children to school, or living in their own homes. They tell me every day that they feel less safe in our community than they did just a few years ago. And unfortunately, the data backs them up. Since this fourth Liberal term government was elected to office in 2015, violent crime has skyrocketed in this country. Total violent crime is up nearly 50%. Homicides are up 28%, and gang-related homicides alone are up a staggering 78%. Sexual assaults, one of the most devastating crimes for victims, are up 75%. And we know that 90% of those victims are women. Violent firearms offenses, crimes involving the use, pointing, or discharge of a gun, are up 116%, and they have increased for 9 years in a row. Extortion is up a whopping 357%, and theft has surged by almost 46%. Trafficking in persons is up by more than 83%, and sexual violations against children, perhaps the most heartbreaking statistic of all, have more than doubled, up 119%. Even crimes like kidnapping, harassment, and forcible confinement are up. This doesn't sound like exaggeration. Canadians are seeing the evidence with their own eyes, and it's no wonder they feel unsafe. Behind every single one of these numbers is a victim, a family, and often an entire community that has been shattered. The statistics confirm what Canadians already know. Since 2015, female victimization for intimate partner violence has risen nearly 19%. Since 2019, when the Liberals passed Bill C-75, the number of female victims of intimate partner violence has risen by another 13.5%. That means tens of thousands more women who have suffered abuse, even as this government claims its legislation was supposed to protect them. And Mr. Speaker, advocates are sounding the alarm as well. Last week I met Kate Alexander, who was left to die by her ex-partner. He was out on bail, by the way, with a $500 fee. Out he goes, but he leaves someone for dead. Kate Alexander, the founder of End Violence Everywhere, put it powerfully. I quote, "Canada has become a graveyard of preventable deaths. Innocent women and children paying the price while begging for reform, begging for safety. And yet you point fingers at the U.S. while your own citizens bleed or are forced to leave simply to stay alive." Kate has even asked the Minister of Justice to call her personally and tell her to her face that Canada is not the Wild West. But, Mr. Speaker, the crisis is not just out there somewhere in Canada. It's here. It's in my community in Oshawa and in the Durham region. Krista McNeil, the Executive Director of Victim Services Durham region, recently shared devastating numbers with me. In 2024-25, her team provided direct support for nearly 3,000 victims of intimate partner violence in Durham region, a 33% increase from the year prior. This year, they are already on track to reach 3,700 cases, and that's another 26% increase. And due to how cases are recorded, the true number of incidents last year would have been closer to 4,029. 80% of those survivors are women and girls. And still, femicide is not even recognized as a distinct crime in our criminal code. The Canadian Femicide Observatory reminds us that 2 out of every 3 women in Canada will experience violence in their lifetime, and that a woman is killed every 48 hours in this country. A woman is killed every 48 hours in this country, usually by a man close to her. Krista told me that the violence is getting worse, not better. She reports a rise in intimate partner violence and femicides, an increase in the brutality and the severity of attacks, and more cases involving younger individuals, including teens in dating relationships. She also warns that our justice system is failing survivors. Femicide is ignored in the criminal code. Survivors are left in the dark about offender release. Bail notifications, when they do happen, are not always trauma-informed, in fact, rarely are, leaving women and families in even greater danger. Mr. Speaker, these are not just statistics. They are my neighbors. These are families in Oshawa. These are real people falling through the cracks of a broken system. A system that has been broken by this Liberal government who claims we now can trust them to fix it someday, maybe when they get around to it. Mr. Speaker, how did we get here? How did we get here? We got here because of deliberate choices made by this Liberal government. We all know in 2019 the Liberals passed Bill C-75, which introduced what they call the principle of restraint for bail, requiring judges to give primary consideration to releasing offenders. Earliest reasonable opportunity, least onerous conditions. In other words, regardless of their criminal record, regardless of their history, the starting point is to let them out and to let them out fast. In 2022, they doubled down and passed Bill C-5. This law repealed mandatory prison sentences for a long list of serious offenses. Using firearms in commission of an offense, possessing a prohibited weapon with ammunition, weapons trafficking, importing or exporting guns illegally, robbery with a firearm, extortion with a firearm, and even discharging a firearm with an intent. They reduced mandatory prison sentences for these. They claim to care about gun crime, but their actions expose the truth. Instead of going after violent criminals, they come after people like me, a proud RPAL holder, and other law-abiding firearms owners who follow every rule and every regulation. Meanwhile, the thugs pulling the triggers on our streets are being handed free passes. This government ripped out mandatory prison sentences for the worst gun offenders, the ones who use weapons to threaten, to maim, to kill. They sided with criminals over victims again. The Liberal government has put politics ahead of public safety. The Liberals also opened the door to house arrest for criminals convicted of crimes like sexual assault, kidnapping, human trafficking, arson, and motor vehicle theft. Yes, Mr. Speaker, under this Liberal government, someone convicted of a sexual assault can serve their sentence at home, perhaps even next door to their victim. The consequences are clear. Violent crime has surged 50%. Women and children are more at risk than ever. Police officers are stretched beyond capacity, and repeat offenders are emboldened. Why are they emboldened? Because they know there's no real consequences. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are asking themselves a very simple question. Who does this government really stand with? Victims of crime or the criminals who repeatedly terrorize them? That's why Conservatives have put forth this common sense motion today. It is based on a simple principle: 3 strikes and you're out. If someone is convicted of 3 serious offenses, they will no longer be eligible for bail, probation, parole, or house arrest. They need to go to jail, and they will stay there for 10 years. No bail, no probation, no parole, no house arrest, 3 strikes, and you're out. The motion has 3 major benefits. First, it keeps violent repeat offenders off the streets, protecting law-abiding families and communities, women and children. Second, it deters crime. Criminals will know that if they commit serious crimes again and again and again, they will face real consequences. Third, it restores confidence in our justice system, confidence that's been badly shaken under this government. I've heard some police officers in my community, my hometown of Oshawa, call it the injustice system. Canadians across the country deserve better than this system that puts repeat offenders back on the street within hours of their arrest. They deserve a government that prioritizes the safety of women, seniors, children, and families over the rights of violent criminals. They deserve a government that takes crime seriously. This motion is a chance to correct course. It is a chance to put victims before criminals, to put public safety before politics, and to put common sense back into our justice system. I urge every member of this House to stand with victims, to stand with families, and to stand with the residents of Oshawa and communities right across this country. 3 strikes, you're out. That's what Canadians are asking for, and that's what Conservatives will deliver. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question et commentaire, the Honourable Member for London West.
Thank you, Speaker. I think that everybody in this House can agree with the member opposite that we stand with victims, and no one wants in this House to see any victim or the continuation of victimization of women and other people in our country. I myself had a situation in my riding where a young woman was murdered by her partner, and I stand with her family, and I just want to send another shout out to them right now. But, Mr. Speaker, this policy that their opposition leader put forward today, in every single city that it has been implemented, it has showed to be a failed policy. It not only increased crimes, it didn't even address the issue of crime. So they have been talking for the last 2 days about crimes, they listed so many members of their communities that have been victims of crimes, and yet they're bringing forward a policy that does not bring
I apologize. I do have to give time for the member to respond. The member for Oshawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it sort of makes me ponder and wonder why we're where we are now. We're in the position we're in, where we have to have motions like this because repeat violent offenders keep hurting folks in our community. And the truth is, we've had 6 months of this government. They could have ended thousands and thousands and thousands of deaths and rapes and abuse of children if they had repealed C-75 and C-5. It would have instantly made a difference, Mr. Speaker.
Questions, comments? Question et commentaire. L'honorable député de Repentigny.
The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, as my colleague has shown, the current Conservative proposal is the exact opposite of what we're promoting in Quebec, which is rehabilitation. There's no talk of restorative justice either. I'd like to know what my honourable colleague thinks of the importance of rehabilitation and restorative justice, for example, when it comes to the Youth Criminal Justice Act.
You know, I'm a pretty reasonable person. I believe that folks have an opportunity for redemption. I believe in rehabilitation. I think that it can happen. I believe it can happen. But we're not talking about folks who commit a crime, youth for the first time, they've done something, they can get help. We're talking about folks who have repeatedly, that means over and over again, in case the other side isn't quite aware, repeatedly commit violent crimes. Eventually, how are they going to learn if they don't understand there's consequences? It's cause and effect.
Hear, hear. Questions and comments. Question and commentary. The honourable member for King Vaughan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague from Oshawa for her great presentation, and I want to bring forward a question and a comment. My comment is, in 2024, I was part of the Status of Committee, and Kate Alexander, a very, very vibrant and strong woman, came forward to tell her story. Unfortunately, the Liberals decided to shut her down. She did not have the opportunity to explain why she felt this law that we want to bring forward is going to help protect women of violence. So I'd like to ask, what can we do to ensure that this Liberal government doesn't shut us down again?
The honourable member for Oshawa.
That is a very important question, and honestly, I don't know if I have the exact right answer, because this government has proven since its beginning that women will always be shut down. We've seen it over and over again. They don't care about women, and they claim to care about women, but they're not doing the things that they need to do to protect women, nor to listen to them. And Kate Alexander is a good example of that. She was shut down in committee. How horrifying. For a woman who was left dead by her ex-partner, she wants to speak about it. And what do Liberals do? They say, no, thank you. We don't want to hear your voice. Shameful.
Resuming debate. Reprise du débat.
It's very simple. The entire philosophy of this Liberal government for the last 50
Resuming debate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Hey, that's something everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. A part of the RCMP's exam.
Not trying to dupe anybody. This one's not brand new. This didn't happen this morning, but I saw it, and I do know that I have not seen this in full, and I wanted to watch it. So we're going to watch it now. Michael Cooper. Hopefully Michael Baird and Larry Brock say something too. Let's go.
examination to determine whether the Prime Minister violated Section 139, Sub 2 of the Criminal Code by committing obstruction of justice, correct? That was part of the RCMP's examination.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
And paragraph 19 of the RCMP investigation report states that the strongest theory towards an offense of obstruction of justice was that the Prime Minister shuffled Jody Wilson-Raybould out of the position of Attorney General so that a new Attorney General would make a different decision regarding the prosecution of SNC Lavalin, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
And it's fair to say that the RCMP did not have access to all material evidence surrounding Ms. Wilson-Raybould being shuffled out as Attorney General, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
And so, just to clarify then, or emphasize, the RCMP did not have access to all material evidence on the strongest theory surrounding the Prime Minister's potential criminality involving obstruction of justice, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
And the reason the RCMP did not have access to that material evidence on what was central to determining whether the Prime Minister broke the law was because of the parameters of the scope of the Order of Council with respect to the waiver of cabinet confidentiality, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. The parameters did not allow us to fully look into this one. However, I should just add...
Thank you for that. You answered it. The parameters did not allow you to get that evidence. Now, there is one person who had the authority to expand the parameters of that order in council, and that is the Prime Minister himself, correct?
I would have to say, Mr. Chair, I'm not exactly sure of the exact process of where the Prime Minister would be involved in such a decision. However, I do believe the decision has to be made within the, somewhere within the government.
I would submit the decision would have to be made by the Prime Minister, but the RCMP went and requested an expansion of the scope to obtain that evidence, to follow that evidence, correct?
Before we proceeded with the assessment, yes, we did make a request for an expansion to the parameters.
I would just add, Mr. Cooper, it was not to follow the evidence, it's to glean additional information. That could be evidence.
Correct. And that request was turned down on August 30th, 2019.
I would have to say, Mr. Chair, that the request for the expansion was not allowed.
It was turned down, and it was turned down by the PCO, the Prime Minister's Department, correct?
Mr. Chair, we did receive a letter from the Department of Justice. I could not remember exactly, specifically, if this came from the...
Well, it was from the PCO, and that's in the RCMP's investigation report. And would it be fair to say that the refusal by the Prime Minister's personal department, the PCO, to expand the scope of the order in council significantly impeded the full investigation into the Prime Minister's potential obstruction of justice?
It limited our capability of pursuing a full investigation.
And it would have limited it in a fairly significant way. Because after all, we're talking about going to the heart of the matter of obstruction.
And again, I don't know what additional, not knowing what additional information is out there, it's hard for me to speculate that there's a Pandora box out there which is full of information, so it's hard for us without speculating.
Well, let the record show that the Prime Minister's Department, the PCO, obstructed the RCMP investigation into the Prime Minister's potential obstruction of justice. Are you aware of any other Canadian who can single-handedly block the RCMP from investigating his own criminality in such an effective way as the Prime Minister?
Good question.
Fantastic. I wouldn't use the term, Mr. President, I wouldn't use the term block. The RCMP is, when it runs an investigation, it operates within the parameters and the regulations that we're allowed to. And we see international security investigation as well, where there's some information that we don't have access to, we can't use into an investigation. So it's the parameters. It's the parameters that we are.
I think the answer to that question is there is no one who has such powers? And was any explanation provided by the Prime Minister's personal department why there was this refusal to expand the scope of the Order in Council?
Again, Mr. Chair, as far as for a response on this one, of course, it was indicated, of course, the importance, of course, of these privileges that do exist. They are there for a reason, and again, as the Commissioner mentioned, we do have to operate within these parameters.
It would seem to me to be part of a pattern of a cover-up.
That's right.
That's what it would seem to me to be. How can the Prime Minister be subject to the rule of law, like every other Canadian, if his personal department can shield him from an RCMP criminal investigation?
Absolutely. So, Mr. Chair, I'll let individuals draw their own conclusion. What I come back to is we operate within a set of regulations and parameters that, unfortunately, we made the effort to go and get additional information, and it was refused.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Two-tier
Thank
system
you.
of justice, I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Hey, that's something.
All right, what are we going to play next? I really only planned to be on for an hour. I think we're in an hour and a half, coming close. If anybody's looking for the Chrystia Freeland pieces that are like that the thumbnail represents, just sit back on the timeline. The first part of the show was all about Chrystia. So before we go, I'm going to do it to you, Captain Kirk. Here, we're going to bust out some of this. Yeah.
Some breaking news for you this evening. Edmonton Centre MP Randy Boissonneau says he will not be a candidate in the next federal election. Boissonneau says many will not see this as a shock. He says the last year has been incredibly difficult for him and his family. We'll have more details on this when they become available on our website, ctvnewsedmonton.ca.
Later, Randy. Oh, Randy. Where's Randy, guys? Look up. Is he up there? You up there blowing a squirrel, Randy? Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
That squirrel identifies as a chipmunk.
What? Questions orales, oral questions.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
So, yeah, we're going to wrap up. We're back tomorrow. Question period starts a couple hours early on Fridays. If you want to be there for the live show, just a heads up on that. I'll drop a notice on there so people can be aware of what time the show is going to start. My name is Aaron. This is Canadian Looney. We cover Canadian federal politics here, and we know that we need change. Everybody thinks I'm a big conservative, and I am siding with the Conservatives until I'll give them probably a year and a half after if they win the next election to see if they can make change. If not, I'm leaving Canada. I'll be out of here. I'm not separating. I'm leaving. Because it's not going well. This is a constructed plan or a well thought out plan to deconstruct our country, and they're pulling it off. And we still have about 30 or 40% of the country that's in denial about it. Like, if you pay attention, not to the news, but if you watch the politics, you'll figure it out. Like, we're being duped, or those people are. They're naive. Like, a lot of people are, like, straight up. And I'm not talking about the people that are watching now, but a lot of older people do get their news from CBC or the radio or whatever. Here's an example. Like, the radio station, the local one here is called CIGO. Whatever, and their theme now, like, and it's not tied, it's supposed to be tied to the government, but it is. Their thing is, oh, CIGO, elbows up. Like, that, and then they'll say, like, oh, we don't use slogans. 2-word slogans. At least the Conservatives use 3 words. It's ridiculous what's going on. Anyhow, thank everybody. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Moderators also, I understand it's a lot of hours a day. I don't expect everyone to be here all the time. It's great when you can be. It's more fun. That's for sure. But yeah. Since we're here, let's see if I can find something really interesting to watch. What are we doing? Sorry, gang. Again, I planned on not going as long as I have. There we go.
OK, bonjour tout le monde. Nous commencerons par des commentaires sur l'économie canadienne et les relations entre le Canada et les États-Unis, pour ensuite passer aux mesures que nous prenons pour réduire le coût de logement. Enfin, aux nouvelles règles de simulation de crise, et le ministre Duclos fera le point sur le nouvel ensemble des terres publiques pour l'habitation. Okay, so I'd like to start by talking about the good news on inflation. Inflation was 2% in October. That means for the past 10 months, inflation in Canada has been within the...
Sorry, gang, I don't have the juice. I'm too tired. I'm going to run. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back, like I say, tomorrow. I've got to get some rest. My eyes are literally crossed. Like, I don't know if you can see it, but I can see that they're crossed. It's wild. Just too much time in front of these screens and the lights. Thank you all for watching. We're going to go out on this. And we are going to go out on this time. No, come on, Aaron.
You should do exercise. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Bumper, bumper, stomper, boo. Tell me, do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon and Mona. I see Catherine and Harley. I see Anne and Elizabeth and Jean. I see Bert and Nicole, and I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romper Room. Bing bong, hopper, hey-daddy-doo. Bing bong, tick-tock, bee-bop-boom.
Kick off your weekend with exciting CFL action when the Edmonton Eskimos tackle the BC Lions in Vancouver. Tomorrow night at 10:30 on CFTO TV.